Hello, everyone. This is JVL from the Bulwark here with our culture editor, Sonny Bunch, and we are reacting to news that Kathleen Kennedy is out as the head of Lucasfilm, the czar of Star Wars, the empress of the galaxy from far, far away. She's not out yet, but she's going to be retiring. Word leaked. Sonny, we've never really done a lot of toxic fandom at the Bulwark, but I think that's all about to change right now.
Toxic fandom. No, it's so funny because I saw this news break. In real time, in absolute real time. I got the email from Matt Bellany at Puck. Great newsletter. Everyone should sign up. 100% great newsletter. Everyone should sign up. I got it as I was walking, like literally as I was walking to go to bed. And I almost tweeted it out. Kathleen Kennedy is leaving in the next few months here. That's what he's reported, that, 3 people have told him that she's in the process of retiring. And I didn't, because I did not want to wake up to that in my mentions. I didn't want to be the first person to, literally, I would have been the first person to tweet about it, I think, except for Bellany. And I didn't want to have to deal with that in my mentions.
Can you explain to people what this means, in case you are not a Star Wars nerd?
Sure. So the thing to remember about Kathleen Kennedy is that she takes over at Lucasfilm after George Lucas sells Lucasfilm to Disney. But before that, she had a very long and successful career as a producer. Like, I think a lot of people, and a lot of the Star Wars nerds in particular, don't really grapple with how successful she was in her career. She's a driving force at Amblin under Steven Spielberg. She produced Steven Spielberg classics like Jurassic Park.
Dinosaurs eat man. Woman inherits the earth.
E.T., Munich, just a bunch of them. She also produced like The Sixth Sense, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Seabiscuit. My personal favorite movie that she produced, Congo. She produced Congo with Frank Marshall directed Congo, and
Ernie Hudson.
Ernie Hudson, Delroy Lindo, just a Joey Pants shows up in an uncredited role. Great movie, great cast, looks great. It's a real feat of producing, not necessarily the best movie. But I want people to understand that she is a successful producer, executive producer, like has a real talent for bringing things together. And like people will say, oh well, she was just riding on Spielberg's coattails. She was riding on George Lucas's coattails. Like this isn't, and I don't think that's fair. None of that's fair. That's just not true. It's you don't have a career in Hollywood like she does without having some real skill. So she is basically chosen by George Lucas to take over at Lucasfilm under the aegis of Disney. And Disney, for its part, has been pretty hands-off with Star Wars. Now, I mean, obviously there's a lot of overlap. The stuff on Disney Plus, the Star Wars shows, we'll talk about that. The stuff at the theme parks, which my kids love. My kids love the Galaxy's Edge stuff. It's all very, very well done. But the world of Star Wars has been treated with real kids' gloves by Disney. And that is because I think we should not forget that right after the Lucasfilm sale, there were a series of pretty huge wins for Lucasfilm and Disney and Star Wars, right? You got The Force Awakens, which, regardless of how you feel about the creative side of that movie, is still the highest grossing domestic film of all time at $953 million. That's how much that movie made just domestically.
Seems like a lot.
2.07 billion or something like that worldwide. But it is the highest grossing film domestically by $80 million. Now, this isn't adjusted for inflation, whatever. But like it remains still the highest grossing domestic film. Rogue One was an enormous hit. Rogue One was another $1 billion grossing movie, and it served also as a proof of concept that you could do the standalone Star Wars movies and they could still be big hits. And it looked like Disney, between The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and The Last Jedi, which we'll discuss in a minute, it looked like Disney was going to dominate December for the rest of our lives. I think I even wrote something to this effect. You're going to have a Star Wars Disney
dry
movie
January, Disney December, right?
in theaters every December for the rest of our lives. And then on top of all that, The Mandalorian kicks off Disney Plus, is an enormous hit.
This is the way.
Drives tens of millions of subscriptions. Like frankly, the
and
purchase
merch sales of Baby Yoda,
merch
out
sales
the wazoo, right?
through the roof.
The most successful new IP character since Spider-Man, maybe.
I don't know.
Right?
Hard to say.
Probably
Hard
not
to say.
really, but in terms of merchandising, Baby
Certainly
Yoda
since
does
the
not come
Ewoks.
around every year.
Yeah. So anyway, like you have to give her credit for those wins. Those are huge wins. Everything else Star Wars and really Lucasfilm related has been an enormous disaster under Disney. Everything has been just a disaster. I mentioned briefly The Last Jedi. You got to look at what happened with that sequel trilogy. The problem with the sequel trilogy was that there was nobody at Lucasfilm who could guide this thing in a reasonable way forward to give it a sort of uniform identity. So instead you have J.J. Abrams makes a movie, Rian Johnson makes a movie that like throws out 80% of the stuff J.J. Abrams did. J.J. Abrams comes back after Colin Trevorrow gets fired from the Rise of Skywalker or whatever they were going to call that. And J.J. Abrams was like, no, Rian Johnson, I'm putting all of those things back in and we're doing more stuff that you didn't want to do. And there was nobody in charge. And that is a failure of leadership. That's a failure of leadership.
It's worse than nobody's in charge, Sonny. You're downplaying it. The problem is that there was no plan.
Yes, right.
It is stunning to me to make a trilogy without having any idea where your trilogy is going. Now, you don't have to be wedded to your concept, but you have to have a concept, right? I mean, somewhere there has to be a sketch for this is the story that this 3-movie pack is going to tell. And these are roughly going to be the beats, and these are roughly going to be the arcs. And instead, they seem to have been made one at a time.
Well, I guess you don't know everything about women yet.
Well, they were
I mean like conceived of one at a time.
They were all made in tension with each other. Again, I cannot stress enough.
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
I cannot stress enough how much The Last Jedi feels like a direct repudiation of so much of The Force Awakens, right down to like in the opening moments smashing Kylo Ren's mask, which like I don't know if you remember any of the pre stuff that came out before The Force Awakens, but there were like these loving mini featurettes where J.J. Abrams was like, we spent months working on this mask and we wanted to get it to look just right, and then in the opening moments it just smashed right to bits.
There's an entire thing in Force Awakens where with Maz Kanata where Rey finds the lightsaber. It's this big moment like, well, okay, this is really important. This is an important artifact. It's a whole plot thing. And Rian Johnson literally has Luke Skywalker throw the lightsaber away over his shoulder like a piece of junk.
So let's not dwell on that. Let's not dwell on those. Let's dwell on the other messes. Like, for instance, Solo. Solo was another one of these standalone Star Wars movies, like Rogue One. It was a Star Wars story. It was going to be
the Lord and Miller story first.
So it was Lord and Miller shot a lot of that movie, is my understanding. Christopher Lord and Phil Miller, or did I get that back? Whatever. Lord and Miller shot a bunch of that. And they got fired. They got fired and they got replaced by Ron Howard, and Ron Howard came in. Ron Howard, great director. I love the guy. He was put in a bad situation and delivered a mediocre product. It's not terrible. Solo's not terrible. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but it's pretty mid. And it's not good, and people didn't like it. And it came right on the heels of The Last Jedi, which was a very controversial movie. I don't know if you remember, JVL, a lot of controversy about that movie. And everything from there just went off the rails. Everything, like, there were a whole bunch of movies that got. I'm not going to list all of the movies that were announced and got killed, but you had like the Patty Jenkins
there was a lot, right?
X-Wing movie. There was like a Guillermo del Toro Jabba the Hutt movie. There was a Taika Waititi trilogy of movies, I think. There was a Donald Glover Lando movie that was like, the story about this is so like, Donald Glover is attached to this Lando movie, and my understanding is that nobody talked to Donald Glover about this beforehand. And so the whole thing is just a mess. It's just a mess.
This is an executive mess, right? When you
It's
were
an executive mess. Yes.
That's the problem, and this is why this is the toxic fandom. These are problems of executive leadership, and I kind of can't believe that Disney left Kathleen Kennedy in place for as long as they did. But I think that she gets the worst of all worlds, that there is a toxic fandom which attacks Kathleen Kennedy in ways that are like bizarre and personal. And then there is another toxic fandom which defends her no matter what. And so would have made it painful for Disney to fire her.
No,
and I think Disney basically decided we just have to wait for her to leave on her own.
Totally. That's 100% what happened. And I'm glad you said this, JVL, because look, there are undoubtedly bad sexist fans who were very mean to her. And,
absolutely. That is a real thing.
Let's grant all that. That exists in every fandom everywhere. That's always going to happen. The problem was every single criticism of her, every single suggestion that things were going wrong under her watch at the leadership level was met with, well, we can't give in to the bad fans. We can't give in to the bad fans. We can't give them what they want. We can't let the terrorists win. And like, that's no way to run a company. I'm sorry. You can't just say like, well, we have to leave her there because otherwise the bad guys win. It's a mess. But that's what happened. Yeah. And she's on the way out.
And what's weird is that, again, this isn't like, so Lucasfilm is a studio within a studio, but it's not just a studio, right? A studio can make a bunch of movies that do poorly and then make a bunch of movies that do well later. But IP doesn't really work that way.
No.
Intellectual property needs to be protected and nurtured and shielded, because once IP gets damaged, it becomes less valuable.
Right.
This was the danger of trying to wait her out. Is what if she was just so bad that the Star Wars IP became less valuable, which I think
so here's the thing, right? Is that there's a direct comparison within the Disney house that could be made about this, which is how Marvel was handled, how all the MCU stuff was handled. Everybody looked at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and said, this is how they're doing it right over here. They're doing standalone movies and they're all interconnected and they're all hugely successful and we're everybody's happy. Everybody's happy here. And now that whole thing has kind of gone off the rails. I think an underappreciated aspect of why all of this has gone off the rails is Disney Plus, but that's a conversation for another time. That's a whole separate can of worms, and we can get into that some other day. But the problem with Star Wars and with Lucasfilm, and frankly, it's not just Star Wars, right? Lucasfilm is also where the Indiana Jones IP lives, right? So Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is not a good movie.
That's a bad movie.
It's not a good movie. It's misconceived on
every level.
Virtually every level. It's wrong. It's competently made because James Mangold is a competent director, but it's not a good movie. And it is really jarring to watch. It's very jarring to watch Dial of Destiny and even Kingdom of the Crystal Skull back to back, because Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, for all of its problems, is still a Steven Spielberg movie. And Steven Spielberg is a transcendent director who understands how camera moves work, who understands the fluidity of motion in pictures better than literally anybody else. James Mangold, for as good as he is not that. And so you watch that movie, which again, it's not a good Indiana Jones movie, but it is identifiably an Indiana Jones movie. And you watch Dial of Destiny, you're just like, what are they doing over there? Like, why is this happening?
I want to mount not a defense of Kathleen Kennedy, but a possible explanation, and I want you to react to it for me. There is a cult of Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, which says he's a genius and look how well Disney did, and he bought all this IP. But the little known secret of Bob Iger's career is that he's like the Homer Simpson character when he goes to take over the Globotech or whatever it's called. You know, that thing you're doing, can you do more of it? Sure, boss. Do more then. That's what Iger does. This thing, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, gets good net ratings as a special event. Well, let's just do it every day. And he winds up killing things because of that, right? He killed Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And he finally killed Marvel. As genius as Kevin Feige is, Marvel is in a lot of trouble because Bob Iger just kept saying, do more, do more, do more. And so you have just, Marvel. I don't think it's just superhero fatigue, although that's part of it. But if that exists, then Marvel created it. And maybe that was part of what happened to Kathleen Kennedy, that she was living under. I mean, people forget she was the head of Lucasfilm, but she had to live under Bob Iger, who was saying, I need X number of Star Wars streaming products for Disney Plus per annum. And so that's why you got a bunch of really bad Star Wars streaming products.
Yeah, I mean, I do think
Iger broke Marvel, so why isn't it possible that he also broke Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy?
Right. I think it is underappreciated the extent to which Disney Plus is really messing up both of these properties. And again, this is a whole separate video, but like the fact that we haven't had, by the time The Mandalorian and Grogu comes out, which is a movie that is based on a Disney Plus show, by the time that hits theaters in May of 2026, it'll have been 6.5 years since the last Star Wars movie has been in theaters. So I'm sympathetic to the idea that there's too much crap on Disney Plus. There's a lot of stuff that's not great. Andor aside, people really love Andor. I thought Andor was fine, but like Andor, let's grant that Andor was very good, and the first couple seasons of The Mandalorian were very good. There's so much bad stuff out there. That doesn't excuse the fact that the movie product has disappeared entirely. I mean, I like the complete absence. And look, there have frequently been long lacunas between Star Wars series, right? You go from Return of the Jedi to The Phantom Menace is 16 years, something like that. Between Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens was another 10 years, whatever. I mean, there are gaps like this, but the promise of bringing Lucasfilm under the Disney label was we're going to do a movie a year. We're doing this. It's going to be there all the time. And instead of doing that, they shifted to we're going to do a TV series every 6 months, and the returns on that have been very diminishing. It's not a great state of affairs. I will say though, again, it's working out on the parks level, and that's an enormous and under-discussed part of the Disney business.
The economics work in a certain way, right?
The economics of this, if you go to Disneyland or you go to Disney World and you go to the Galaxy's Edge place, it's always packed. The lines for Rise of the Resistance are always 2 hours. There are the most expensive rides in the parks to get on if you want to skip the line. Like it is still a valuable property. It is. I think it is still there to be saved. I think it is probably good to get fresh blood in at the top. Though the fresh blood, I would assume, is going to be Filoni and Favreau, the guys who have been running the Star Wars stuff on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that really counts.
Yeah. This is for me, the duality of Kathleen Kennedy is that she made the highest grossing Star Wars movie ever and the best Star Wars movie ever, I think, which is Rogue One. I think Rogue One is, I'm not willing to say that it's better than A New Hope and Empire, but it's like 1A, 1B, and 1C. I just rewatched it last week. It is in the conversation. And I mean, that is the first movie since A New Hope where you care about like 7 different characters. As the movie's going, you like, oh, I like this character. Oh, what's going to happen to her? What's going to happen to him? That blind guy, that blind monk, he's great. I love him. No, don't let him die. Right. And she also made what I think are the 2 worst Star Wars movies, which are the Rise of Skywalker and what was the Rian Johnson middle one, Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. Yeah.
Those movies are terrible. And I say that, I don't want to spoil you and I are going to have another conversation this week. In the last week, I also rewatched Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, which are bad movies. They're both better than the Last Jedi and Rian Johnson.
We can have it out over. We can have it out over Revenge of the Sith because I'll go to the
how
mat
bad.
for that one.
That's how bad. Yeah,
Attack of the Clones is the worst Star Wars movie. I hate everything about that movie from how it looks to now. It's well, I don't know. This is how much. Look, I've never revisited Rise of Skywalker. I have no intention of ever revisiting Rise of Skywalker. So, like, I don't know.
Before you say Attack of the Clones is worse, you'll have to go and see Rise of Skywalker. I'm telling you, I can't. Did these things.
I can't. I would rather. But here's the thing: I would rather watch Attack of the Clones again. I don't know. We're getting off the rails. We're getting off the rails. Here we are.
All right. Final question.
Yeah.
Final question. Why is Disney and Lucasfilm so intent on making Grogu happen instead of just Baby Yoda? This is one of the most insane branding things I've ever seen.
Yoda is not a species
which is sensational,
name.
And everybody calls it Baby Yoda, and they first become obsessed. No, it's the child. The child. It's not Baby Yoda, and now, well, it's Grogu. What?
Because Yoda is not. You can't just call him Baby Yoda.
Stop trying to make fetch happen, Disney.
He's not Yoda as a baby. It's not Yoda. It would be one thing if Yoda was the name of the race, right? Then it could be like Baby Yoda.
Sure.
He's a Baby Yoda, but he's not. That's a separate character. That's a separate.
Okay. Why does
character.
that matter? They don't actually have laser swords. Laser swords don't exist either. Like, these things don't have to make sense. You just roll with it. He's Baby Yoda.
All right, that's fair. I mean, look, I call him Baby Yoda. So,
guys, follow the channel, hit subscribe, hit like, and fight in the comments. I want to hear, what is the worst Star Wars movie? Defend your position. See ya.
Hey, YouTube fam. If you want to support the Bulwark, the best way to do it is by becoming a YouTube Bulwark Plus member. The Bulwark is truly independent. We have no corporate overlords. We're not settling any dumb lawsuits with Trump. By joining, you help support our work, and you can get a bunch of perks right here on this platform. Ad-free content, bonus videos, live streams, and some emojis of me, which I guess some people want. So come join, come hang out, become a Bulwark YouTube Plus member, and I'll be seeing you in the comments. So behave.